anyone who's just joining, we'll get going in a second. This is our first session of 4 for this year's webinar series, Scaling Your Digital Advertising. Today we're focusing on maximising digital trends for your strategic growth. And I'm joined with Jodie, my wife, and our performance lead. Did you want to say hi to everyone?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Jodie. As Frankie just said, I'm performance lead at Climbing Trees. So what that actually means is that I help with the digital strategy side of things, so piecing together organic, paid, and then looking into programmatic and those types of things. I guess a bit of a fun fact about me is that I actually started my agency career with Climbing Trees back in 2015. Then I worked there for a couple of years, and then I moved on to London, worked in some top agencies there like Publicis and the Kite Factory, on clients like LVMH, Disney, and UNICEF, and a bunch more as well. So that's cool. And now I've come back to Climbing Trees, and yeah, lovely stuff. In terms of today, for this webinar, we'll keep things quite top line, so talking more about the strategic side of things, and then the actions that you can take off the back of that. I love stuff when it's action orientated. I'm quite like that as a person, so what I'll sort of be going through when Frank's asked the questions is what you can actually take from today and go forward with.
Awesome. You done?
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. So I think, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the current landscape?
Yeah.
Where we're at?
Yeah, I think it's, before we start thinking about all the things that we can do in digital, we probably need to look at the landscape and think about where we're at. We're obviously in, and this is like super cliche, but I'll start with the cost of living. But it's cliche, but the most important thing to talk about, right? I know everyone's probably been affected on a personal level. You've got all the rising costs of energy, mortgage rates, supermarket prices, and all of that. So I think, you know, as consumers, we're in a different space than we were a year ago, and that's constantly changing as well. I think I saw that Utterly Butterly had doubled in price from £1 to £2, which is just extortionate. But yeah.
That is, it's really terrifying how much things are costing. I didn't know that there was butter out there for £2. I'm really sorry that we've been buying their pack for like £5-6, so maybe we can talk about that.
That's good. So yeah, we'll talk about that later and change our shopping habits, I guess.
But off the back of this, so, you know, we know things are tough for people right now, but are consumers, you know, stopping to purchase because of this?
Not necessarily. So it seems that people are trying to lower their monthly bills. So there was a bit of research that YouGov have put together recently, and they said they found out basically 19 million people in the UK, they cancelled their subscriptions in the last 12 months, which is mental. So I guess, like, I think personally I've probably been through something where I'm going like, okay, I've got all these monthly bills, what's the easiest thing to take off? And it is sometimes those subscription models. So yeah, I think that's, from that perspective, it's mostly video, so Netflix, Disney Plus, those types of things that people are cancelling, but also the audio side, people are cancelling their Spotify subscriptions, and they're not going off it completely, they're just opting for the ad-funded models, which, wow. Yeah, which is fine, and it's a really good place for brands to be in because it means more ad space, and generally when more ad space becomes available, the CPMs become a bit cheaper. So that's quite a good thing, really, from an advertising perspective, not because we are trying to cut our budgets.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, if consumers are moving on to more of these ad-free platforms, then it, you know, as you said, it's a great opportunity. But what about how, you know, this downturn in the economy is affecting those marketing budgets for brands? How are things playing out for them?
Yeah, so I think at the back end of last year, it was kind of, I wouldn't say scary, but I think there was lots of talk around what the hell was going to happen with our marketing budgets in 2023. And so what we've seen is a lot of belt tightening, if you want to call it that. So brands are trying to squeeze every penny from their marketing budget, or if they're reducing it, they're kind of focusing on those areas that don't directly affect the bottom line. So any channels that don't have a high ROI, they're kind of going, okay, well, let's just shift our budget into that. And I think for us, our clients aren't really as affected as other brands, because our clients generally are more performance focused anyway. So we already do that cost effective exercise. And we kind of advise clients when they are going through that cost effectiveness exercise is that you don't want to be too ambitious with your ROI goals, because if you go super ambitious with your ROI goals, sometimes you can end up reducing the scale of your activity. So yes, okay, it's super efficient, but your growth is stumped by that. So what you want to try and do is like get that happy medium of what your ROI is, and make sure that you're measuring things correctly.
Okay, no problem at all. I'm sure that's good enough advice for some. So what if it's on the other side? What would you say to brands if they're, you know, completely reducing their budgets?
Yeah, I think from that perspective, there's been a lot of research and a lot more smarter people than me that have been doing the research. I'm just quoting them back, but essentially there was a piece of research that was done at the back end of last year, and it came out and it said brands who maintain or increase their spend during a recession tend to come out stronger.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big statement, and you know, you can see why that would be. So our sort of advice for brands in this scenario is make sure you keep researching and analysing what your competitors are doing. If your competitors reduce their spend, there's probably a bit more of an opportunity for you to gather some more market share. So if you can actually afford to maintain or increase your spend, then that's a really good place to be. And I think we're working with some of our clients at the moment and running quite regular SimilarWeb reports, and SimilarWeb can kind of identify to us if someone starts to reduce their spend across paid search, for example. And then we monitor that for our clients so that you can, you know, spot those gaps, spot those opportunities, and then once you see a change in what your competitors are doing, you can then weigh up the risk versus benefit of to whether what you do with your spend.
Cool. Okay. So any final advice for brands around this kind of cost of living crisis?
Yeah, and I think it's really simple. We are all human. So communicate with your prospects or your customers like you are human and not a brand in that sense. You want to make sure your messaging and your brand tone is sort of sympathetic to the scenario that we all find ourselves in, and sort of acting in solidarity with that. giffgaff, I've got a really cool example. So giffgaff came out and they've been running a campaign about freezing their prices. And essentially across the whole of 2023, they're not going to do anything with their pricing. And like, as a loyal customer of giffgaff myself, that made me feel stability. So if 90% of my bills monthly are increasing, at least if I can keep that 10% stable, I'm happy. And I think that a lot of other people felt like that, other giffgaff customers.
Yeah, well, I'm not one. I'm with O2, and they've upped my prices this year. They upped them. I swear they upped them in like October as well. It's maybe we do need to have a chat.
Yeah.
I mean, for anyone who's looking, if anyone's here and they run an e-commerce website and you're looking at ways making that more profitable, and especially if you're on a kind of Shopify platform, do tune in later on in the year when we'll have Charlie, our paid lead, in the hot seat running through those questions. So that's something to look forward to. Away from the cost of living, and obviously we are a B Corp, and so moving up, so we do have to take stock of where the world is at with sustainability in the wider landscape. But is this still a hot topic for brands?
Yeah, I think it's a crucial topic, really, which on the surface I guess surprises me, only because where we see people being more specific with their budgets and trying to belt tighten, as I was saying earlier, it's usually the sustainable products and the sustainable media is more expensive. So when you start cutting those budgets, you're like, well, okay, it makes sense for me to cut this. But actually, people are still seeing this as a priority, which is obviously really good for the planet.
Absolutely.
But in terms of that, and it's just so you don't only go on my opinion, there has been some research done in the background. Harvard Business School, I tried to blend all three of those together. Harvard Business School, they did a study and they found out that 77% of consumers are motivated to buy from brands who are committed to making the world a better place. So I think that just puts the emphasis on how important it is. And not only that, they did a little bit of a study on investors.
Yeah.
And investors were more likely to invest
in
these brands as well. Yeah.
I mean, it's really incredible to hear, and we've come so far on that sustainable journey as in the UK and across the world. So what about when brands are advertising? Are they talking much about being sustainable? What's the deal there?
Yeah, I think I guess it's as much as they can do. I think greenwashing is obviously a massive issue. So brands want to make sure they've got all their ducks in a row before they start advertising that what they're doing from that perspective. So yeah, erring on the side of caution a little bit. But I think a brand that does this really well is IKEA. And I absolutely love these videos, right? We'll share the links with you afterwards so you can share our love for these. But IKEA have a sustainable toy range, and basically they created a few videos, and one of them is this like young shark talking about how his parents met, and spoiler alert before I say this, the big sort of reveal is that his parents are a party cup and a plastic straw. And they sort of play on the fact that he's like the ultimate party animal, right? And it's just brilliant, but it's a really like cool, fun play on like quite a serious topic, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and it sounds like they had a whale of a time. So I couldn't resist. So we've not touched too much on sustainability in this webinar because we've got a whole webinar dedicated to it. It's our last webinar of the year where we're joined with Will, who looks after a lot of our sustainability clients. So our next section you wanted to chat about was cookieless. This isn't the world being without cookies, but just digital.
Yeah, well, it's advertising being without cookies, I guess. But yeah, I'm sure you have all heard the word cookieless plastered around. It's been spoken about for a couple of years now, and there's lots of changes all the time with it. So I kind of wanted to take stock of where we're at now, because those cookies are going to disappear. Google have come out and said by 2024. So we're sort of like on countdown in terms of the amount of months we have to prepare for it. Just a quick recap on what this is basically Google are removing third-party cookies. What this means is these cookies work mostly with like ad networks and analytics. They sort of monitor browsing behavior, so that this is super simple, by the way. There's a lot more to it. But
I'm understanding.
I know, I'm trying to condense it down, right, so that we don't spend a whole hour talking about what they do. But basically what this enables brands to do is provide really personalized and targeted ads to people.
Got you.
So for example, outside of work, I coach football. So not only do I browse a lot of stuff about advertising, I'm also looking for my next training session and trying to get new ideas. So those cookies track me and understand that. So I might get served some ads for football boots or some sort of app that helps me control who's attending training and football games and stuff like that. And that makes it really personalized to me, right? So that cookie knows that about me. But when the cookies vanish, they're not going to know that about me. So it will end up being like ad tech companies essentially, and I'll go into it in a bit more detail, but they're trying to increase their tech so that we can work without third-party cookies. because those user insights, the delivery and the measurement of ads will make it much more difficult without them.
No, I mean, it sounds like such a huge change. Are brands ready for it?
So yeah, half of brands. The IAB said that 48% of brands are
Wow, so
prepared.
less than half.
Yeah, slightly less than half, but I didn't want to be cut
Yeah, it's a little bit,
empty about it. But yeah, so yeah, and I think I'll go into a bit more detail about, like, if you're not ready, we can sort of explore what to do.
Yeah, well, do you know what? My next question I prepared earlier was, how can brands prepare?
Yeah, so one massive thing, first party data. This is essential. You may already have a lot of this, or you may be in the process of capturing first party data, but this is the data that you have. It's consented, it's reliable and trustworthy. So this is where you want to focus your efforts around initially.
Got you. And well, how can if people aren't generating this kind of first party data, how can they go about that if they haven't already?
Yeah, I guess so. My advice is, from that perspective, is brands should look at what you've got. Have you got a CRM system? What level of data is available in that CRM system?
What about if anyone's on, like, an old Excel?
Well,
I mean,
a rogue non passworded Excel sheet.
Well, you'd hope
if it's like that,
passworded.
Please shift it to password protected. But yeah, anything like that that's lying around that you know that data's consented for, take a look at that. And what you can start to do once you get that information is look at who your target audience is. So your current customer obviously represent who your next customer would potentially be.
Yeah.
So kind of trying to understand that, profile them a little bit, because we're going to have to go more on the broader data sets when we lose cookies. So it's important to take stock of that, really. And you can also work with audience profiling companies.
Cool. So there's quite a bit, brands can be doing there.
Yeah, and on that, I suppose the next step of that is, how do you generate more? So some brands are using like 10 to 20% of their marketing budget to actually allocate towards lead generation, and getting this first party data. So you can use campaigns on Facebook. I'd say Facebook's probably the most cost effective way of doing this.
Okay.
But you can use they're called instant forms, I think. But essentially, you can run your Facebook ads. When someone clicks on that ad, they go straight to a form. So rather than like leaving Facebook, they go to this form, and you can personalize the details that they give you there. Generally, these campaigns work really well if you do a value exchange.
Got you.
So for a B2B brand, that might be a gated white paper that someone submits their details so that they then have access to it. For an e-commerce brand, you might run a competition where people submit their details to enter, and then you have that whole bunch of information. Or if you're a charity, it might be a fundraiser where they get a free t-shirt if they take part in a sponsored walk or something like that.
Okay, cool. So there's quite a bit then which we can be doing before 2024 to make sure we're prepared for when the cookies vanish.
That's exactly it.
So, I mean, moving into how people are sort of interacting with media these days, we know that video is becoming more and more important and popular. We also know that a lot of display and video relies heavily on these third-party cookies. So what does that mean?
Yeah, like it's a really good point, and I think the whole premise of programmatic's kind of been built on that. So pairing that individually identifying data and then being able to serve really relevant ads, like that's what it's been built on, right? So when we lose those third-party cookie insights, it's going to be quite tough. So these ad tech companies, they're trying to find new ways, or even old school ways, I guess, because when you first did display back in the day, it's more contextual. So it's about like, okay, I'm reading this web page, it's got this content on it, maybe I should serve an ad about football training guides or something like that.
Okay.
And that's what like these programmatic companies are doing now. So in terms of that, they're trying to improve it from where it was 15 years ago-ish. And there's some really interesting things that some companies are doing with AI. So if you want to look into a company about this, there's a company called SeedTag who are really cool. They use AI to actually determine the semantics of the information that someone's reading. So if I was reading a news article and it had a negative connotation, I probably wouldn't want my brand ad to serve there. I would want it to make, we want to make sure that content is brand safe in a way.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, carrying on with this kind of cookieless journey, is there any sort of other digital channels which, you know, can really help brands thrive?
Yeah. There are. There are 3 that are all cookieless, and they have the most scale. My first favourite is digital out of home, and I know there's a few people that know me on this webinar and will know that I would always talk about digital out of home. But
Not
yeah,
years ago though.
but you can buy that digitally now, so that our team can buy that through platforms that we use here. So,
and these are all just kind of specific digital screens which you'll see at the shopping centres or at train stations, bus stops, when you're going up the escalator on the tube, those ones which change all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess now you can personalize things around events or direct people to any events that you're hosting. And I think McDonald's have done this really well. So back when it was sunny last year, which I literally cannot wait for the heat to come back, counting down the days. But McDonald's did this really well during that heat wave that we had last year, and they had digital screens in London. And essentially what did is they said, hey London, it's 25 degrees outside, get your frozen lemonade drinks from McDonald's, and we're just around the corner.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then obviously when the weather goes bad, they serve the hot drinks like cappuccinos and things like that. So they swap the product in and out, and that just gives people a really like relevant experience and sort of like in the moment as well.
And that's just so simple as well, isn't it? Just like,
yeah, when you say it like that, it sounds so simple, but it's brilliant at the same time.
No, it really is. So what kind of impact is like out of home having on driving sales for brands? Is it something which, you know, is really going to see that revenue increase?
Yeah. So fundamentally, digital out of home is an awareness, a consideration driving channel.
Yeah.
But when it works as a multi-channel campaign, it really works well. So for some brands that we've worked with, we ran like a short 4-week campaign. And during those 4 weeks, when we were running digital out of home, we saw that their direct traffic increased by 20%.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, depending on how much monthly traffic you get, that could be a sizable amount more people coming to the website. And say you have a 5% conversion rate or whatever your conversion rate is, that ends up being like quite a strong incremental growth to your sales or your conversions, whether that's leads or downloads. So yeah, I think on the surface, yes, awareness consideration channel, but it does have that overall effect. And depending on how you're measuring your media, if you're running like econometric models, like you'll be able to understand that straight away, right? But if you're doing something a bit more rudimental in that phase, then I guess it'd be a little bit more difficult to measure.
Okay, cool. So what about any other channels? What about streaming? Is that having much of an impact on advertisers?
Yeah, I guess like the way we interact with media is constantly evolving.
I think I read a stat the other day actually, which said that people pay more attention when they're watching YouTube compared to if they're watching TV.
Yeah, which is crazy, especially if you're watching YouTube on an actual TV screen as well. So you get that double whammy of it being like the hero screen in that sense. But yeah, there's a seismic shift happening, and there's stats up there. I think 66% of the UK population are using TV streaming services. Yeah, the younger people, but we are seeing the like older generations actually join. They're more likely to use the catch-up TV like ITV and Channel 4 and that type of thing. But yeah, like we're definitely seeing that massive opportunity for brands to be there on that big screen, but buying it digitally, and you're not held to the same rules as you are on like if you run linear TV campaigns. So you don't have to go through all of that approval. Obviously, there is still rules, and I think what's really nice about that is that, you know, historically you had to be a massive brand to be on TV.
Well, it costs a fortune, doesn't it? If you want to advertise on a prime spot on a Saturday night. So.
Exactly. Or like if you're a big brand, you generally work with a massive agency who's got those connections in-house at these sales houses to buy the TV. But now that you've got it available digitally and you can buy it in that way, like local brands can get involved, and you could run connected TV ads only in Essex, and you don't need like a super massive budget to have an impact.
No. In the connected TV kind of stuff on the smart TVs, that's like your Samsung TV Plus, isn't it? Where you've got those digital channels, which are, I remember, like a catfish channel.
I love that catfish channel.
But they've got like a Beano channel now, which I thought was really cool. And like location, it's just got loads of repeats on. But you get those same channels on the Fire Stick. So the connected TV advertising is purely on that, and the streaming, it's not on the linear sort of TV.
Yeah, exactly. Anything with an aerial, no.
Cool. That's good to know. And what about Netflix?
Yeah, so just before we touch on Netflix, I just wanted to take it back to let you know where you can buy the connected TV ad placements. So you've got places like Amazon, so the Freevee, Twitch, Fire TV, Apple TV, and then, like I mentioned a minute ago, with Channel 4 and ITVX and Sky. And then sort of like the places where people are watching is consoles, smart TVs, and streaming sticks. So anything that's to do with that is where we'll see those ads.
Oh, okay. And then so I guess then if you can determine what device that is, you could then say, you know, if you were looking to target a video gamer or something, if you know there's probably more likely they're gonna watch Netflix on their Xbox or their PlayStation, you're better off only showing ads to Xbox. That's incredible.
Exactly. So you can actually go right down to that level and go, okay, I want to show ads to people that are watching ITVX, but I want it to only be on Xboxes and PlayStations.
Wow.
So yeah, you can drill down in that way, and then because it's cookieless as well, you get that added layer of control that you might be losing elsewhere.
Got you. So bring it back to Netflix then.
Yes.
They've announced their ad funded model. You still pay for it, and then you get ads.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, so late last year, Netflix announced a partnership with Microsoft, and essentially Microsoft have a programmatic platform, and Netflix wanted to give them their ad inventory so that people could buy it through that. And I guess that kind of feeds into the whole, like what we were talking about with the cost of living crisis. Netflix have obviously been watching that progress and seeing their subscriptions go down. So they're trying to find a way to keep that their revenue streams, as well as support the general public in keeping their Netflix accounts.
Yeah, because it's a funny old world when it comes to streaming now, because you get rid of one and you can't watch something, or it gets released on another. So you know, if everyone had a ad-funded version, I guess everyone would be able to watch sort of every bit of content out there as well.
Yeah.
So I know the last thing you're going to speak about is audio. So was it your least favorite channel, or was it just your third favorite?
No, it's definitely my third favorite. I have no least. I have no
Okay,
non-favorites.
sorry. I should have said that. But no, we all know you love a good podcast. So talk to us about how brands can be utilising that audience.
Yeah, I mean, you know me. I have a podcast I think I literally have like 6 podcasts on the go at the moment. Mostly focus around either sports or true crime. But I think, yeah, I've got one for the gym, one for my commute, one for the shower, one for when I'm cooking. So, yeah,
that's a bit extreme.
I mean, I thought I was strange until I read all the stats, and this is like the second time this number's come up today, but 19 million people in the UK are also regularly listening to podcasts. I don't know if they have 6 on the go at the same time, but they're regularly
listening.
Don't
try and make everyone out to be weird.
But this number's growing, right? So the expected rate is to keep going up. So I think it's a really unique channel in a way that you feel a personal connection to the host.
Very similar to radio. It's always been there. If you're working at home on your own or on your own, it's it's company, isn't it? It is company.
That's it. And there's lots of trust with it. All these hosts I think are my friends, but they're not really. They have no idea who I am, but I do trust everything they say. And so I guess it's kind of like that age-old word of mouth marketing exists through podcasts and those radio channels. So there's some stats that say like people are more twice as likely to try a product if a podcast host endorses it.
Wow.
So yeah, you got lots more relevant chances there. And again, with audio, it's not necessarily seen as a bottom of the funnel channel. It's more awareness consideration, but the way that that's going to play into your overall bottom line is something that should be looked at.
Okay. So what about not just podcasts, as obviously other ways of buying this sort of digital audio? What's your advice for brands around that?
Yeah, so you can buy through Spotify, SoundCloud, and then literally any online platform any online radio platform you can buy your digital ads through. Some companies offer, sometimes brands in-house, they don't have the resource to actually record a decent 30-second ad. So podcast hosts can do reads for you, or a lot of the companies that we work with actually offer the service of doing that. So if you spend over a certain amount, they might do it at a smaller price for you. So yeah, I think it's definitely something to look at.
All right, thanks for that, Jo. So moving this into some actions then, which people can take away. How should people start adding some of these channels to their wider strategies? Any more advice?
Yeah, I always have something to say, don't I? With this, my main thing is test. Just start testing as soon as you can. Start testing.
Test.
Yeah, just test. No, but I think usually at those high seasonality points of the year for your particular brand, or like where you run your biggest campaigns, you'll have allocated a bigger portion of budget. This is where you're more likely to have the cut through. So I would start potentially testing it then, so that you don't eat into, like, I think you have the maximum impact if you're laying this on with lots of different channels. But what I'd say is there is a minimum budget, because you don't want to just be a drop in the ocean. If you're spending a really small amount and your ad gets shown a couple of times in between something else, you're not really going to get that cut through. So what we say is like a very, very minimum is 5k test for these channels. You could run it, if you have a small budget, if you condense your campaign down into a shorter period, you're more likely to get a cut through. So maybe start with the testing, running them for short periods of time, turning them off, seeing the impact of what's going on. And then once you've planned that, is really think about what your measurement is of that. How are you defining success?
Yeah.
A lot of companies will be able to help you out with the brand recall and uplift studies, that sort of do surveys pre-campaign and then post-campaign to see if there'd been any effect from your ads. So definitely look at those options. If you've got an agency or if you want to come and talk to us, we can definitely provide you some advice on that. So yeah, just give us a shout.
Awesome. And what about like the sort of the creatives? Is there any sort of predictions made around that?
Yeah, like Google were absolutely spot on at the with their prediction for this year, and that is with snackable content.
Stop it.
I call it short form because it does make me a bit hungry when I say snackable. So yeah, short form content. Google had obviously watched the rise of TikTok over lockdown, which just grew ridiculously fast. And then what Google did in response to that is released YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
So it's basically a replica of TikTok in that sense.
Right, I'm of the older. I'm not on TikTok, am I? I'm watching YouTube Shorts. Like
all right, so am I. Don't worry. And actually, YouTube Shorts has like globally 1.5 billion users. And that's actually slightly more than TikTok.
Well, YouTube,
because of
the
legacy of what YouTube is. And this is like a massive opportunity for advertisers and brands to get involved, and you know, test out TikTok, test out YouTube, see what works for you. But I think
there's so many stats out there, isn't it? Like people are more likely to purchase if they've watched a video about your brand and everything like that. So what's your advice? I keep asking you for all your advice. Maybe that's what today's about.
That's what the hot seat's for.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I forgot. What would you say to brands that aren't using TikTok Reels or YouTube Shorts, but for their advertising?
I think, like if you've got a younger demographic that you're trying to target, I mean, get on there quickly, start testing and learning. By testing and learning, you kind of like will understand how your audience engages with you, because you know, something that works on Facebook might not necessarily work on TikTok. So you might have snackable content on both of those, but there's a different format of what works. So like you've got different types of content. So like an influencer might do a 15-second or a 30-second video, or you might have like user generated content that's short, or you might have some digestible content on like how things work and unboxing videos and those types of things. So you just want to like put as much content out there as possible and see what sticks and make more of that.
So just more testing.
That's it.
And there's been so much hype around TikTok since it launched, as you said, but it's now been dubbed as this new search engine for Gen Z. What are your thoughts on that?
Without being savage and a bit blunt, I don't think it's going to take over the world, but it's definitely something we should be keeping our eye on and making sure that we're around with. All right, so there's a senior VP at Google. He recently said that 40% of young people, if they're looking for a place to go to lunch with their friends or whatever it is, they don't go to Google Maps or Google Search. They go to TikTok or Instagram.
That's mental. Where do you even go? Just literally search.
Yeah, I guess.
I wouldn't even know how to do
restaurant in Earl's Cone or Colchester. But yeah, so that's interesting. And like have released their I think it's in beta at the moment. TikTok paid for search ads at the moment, but yeah, so they're jumping on that, and they've got a bit of a tool on their website where you prepare content for and be present on both, really. So make sure that you're optimized for Google, but you're also looking at TikTok from an organic and a paid perspective for that search side of things.
All right, no problem. And bringing it back to search, you wrote an article last month about the future of search looking different due to the advancements in AI.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, who would we be if we didn't start talking about AI? But yeah, I think, well, I know everyone at Climbing Trees and everyone I speak to is completely blown away by how fast AI has advanced in such a short space of time. And then the nerdy side of me, where my background in marketing is paid search, makes me wonder, okay, what does the future look like then?
Yeah.
Like, what does the search engine of 2060 look like? Where are we going to be at? So yeah, I wrote a bit of an article about that, but it all kind of hinges on how the general public embrace AI. So from a marketing perspective, we love AI. It's making our jobs more efficient. We can get information a lot easier. But what does, I think we both spoke to our parents about this, and they're kind of like, oh, what is this? And how do I use it? So we have to think we only make up a small percentage of the population, and yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but what this whole AI search makes me think of is Ask Jeeves. Because hang on, let me get it up, because I was reading about it and I don't know what to type it in. Ask Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves was my best friend when I was at
no, but
school.
I was literally reading this article, and yeah, literally it was on the 6th of March, and the founder said that his original conception for Ask Jeeves was ads. No, there's no bad ads, they're all open. Yeah, they finally had the potential to finally fulfill his vision for how the internet should operate, because the whole reason of Ask Jeeves back then was to be such a conversational, understand what that human was looking for, and then give them a really human response. So it's almost like, because Ask Jeeves came out before Google.
Yeah.
But he was so cool because he didn't have like a little butler in the corner.
Oh yeah,
I used to
love that guy.
But yeah, and Google's obviously made it was really keyword focused, but now we've gone full circle and it's all about long tail
we've
keywords.
gone conversational again.
Conversational. So I just feel bad for Ask Jeeves, because it was 27 years ago, and they were obviously thinking that's how it should be.
His thinking was way too ahead of the game, really. Because how many years ago is that? Like
27.
1996
it was came out.
Wow.
Jeeves, but I think that might be wrong. But okay, so going back to the AI, what does that mean for brands? How can they kind of future proof themselves?
Yeah, I think we've got no idea how it look. We can speculate on how it, like, the chat bot will be the search bar. What does that mean for brands? What does it mean for websites? It's all, I guess, pretty scary stuff to think about, but we have no idea really what's going to happen. But I think we can feel safety in the fact that Google and Bing, or Google and Microsoft, they're not going to actually do anything with this or make it the main way of searching until they can monetize it. So Google make over 90% of their revenue is from ads. So we're not going to see those disappear. So is it sponsored prompts when you're searching? So
wow, I didn't even think about that.
You go, okay, what's the best tapas restaurant within 5 miles of me, and it might suggest things that might be part of the page. But yeah, we don't really know. We can sort of like spitball ideas all we want, but we just don't know. So we have to hinge on what we do know, and we know it's more conversational in that sense. So we have to think about, organically, our content should be optimized towards that, which I think we're starting to do anyway, because we've been talking about the rise of voice search for years and years and years.
100%.
And that
is really conversational, because it's like, hey, can you tell me where the first one is?
Exactly. So you'll talk to a chatbot the same way you'll interact with a voice assistant. So I think lots of companies are already doing this. But yeah, optimizing your content, the technical SEO side of things, to questions and long tail searches, thinking more about natural language rather than how Google was going to rank you and that type of thing. And then from a paid perspective, and I used to run PPC campaigns before bid strategies when everything was manual. So I'm one of those people that's like, oh my God, I have no control over what I'm doing with Performance Max campaigns, and I can't pull any triggers or levers that I used to be able to do. But if we look at where the future's going, we have to embrace those. The future's going AI. Performance Max is algorithmic in the way that it works. So we have to embrace anything that Microsoft and Google release, and make sure we can find ways to make it work for us.
I think that's it. It's hopefully AI is your friend and not your enemy. I know since we sort of invested in the paid version, that the team have been having fun, exploring, experimenting. Did you want to talk about sort of that too?
Yeah. So like the team are doing some amazing work. Obviously, our founder Alex, he invested in GPT-4. So everyone's been having such a great time playing around with it. And I know Josh, who's our organic lead here, he's built loads of like SEO tools to make his job quicker and make it more efficient for our clients.
There's so many tools we have to use.
Yeah.
If we had our own tools, it's
exactly.
It streamlines that.
Exactly. And Will, he works on some of our pan-European campaigns. And we generally work with translation agencies, or we have freelancers that help us with our translations. Because obviously you can't really rely on Google Translate, because it's not really like business like.
No.
However, he's been sort of testing how GPT-4 works with that and making it iterate on some German translations for us. And then we've actually sent that over to a native German speaker, and they think it's brilliant. So it's you know, it's really, really smart. It's intuitive around that translation side of things, so you can ask it to iterate on like, oh, I don't really like that word, what could you replace it with, and that sort of stuff. And I know Will will probably end up doing a blog or something because he's loving it. But I think one of the main things to watch out for, and this isn't something the team has built, but it's the plugin side of what you can do with GPT. Of course.
I mean, I don't use Excel that much.
Yeah.
I really try and avoid it at all costs.
Yeah.
But I know you can put in a plugin, it'll do all your formula bits and everything like that. I mean, that's nuts.
Exactly. So for me, VLOOKUPs, I can do them, but every time I go to do them, I forget how to do it. So I have to keep reading online like how to do the VLOOKUP or some smart formula in Excel. But what you can do now is just say to the plugin and go, okay, I need you to work out this information for me, or put this information in this row on this column, and it will do the formula for you. So yeah, they're really cool. And for all of those people that do email marketing and that type of thing with Zapier, they have a plugin, and you can get it to write emails for you. Obviously, you'll approve it before it goes down, or you can ask it to import certain information about the CRM data that it has. You could ask it to import it elsewhere and that type of stuff. So when we talk about all that first party data, these plugins are going to help make your life easier with that.
Got you. Wow.
Yeah. And there's probably so much more to say on AI.
Yeah.
But I don't want to bore you all to tears. If you guys have any further questions about any of the topics that we've been talking about, if you whack them in the chat box, or the question box, sorry, I can.
We have actually got a couple of questions, Jo.
What have we got?
If you fancy taking a hit. For retailers, thanks for this, Sean. For retailers, what can they do other than focus on audiences if the data on audiences is getting worse? Well, I can't answer that.
Yeah, I think it's still about your audiences, but it's about getting that first party data. And I don't know when that question came in, whether it came in before the first party data.
It came in around, I don't actually
around that point, but I think Sean, I could probably contact you after this as well, and we can go into a bit more detail. But I think it's the first party data aspect of it, looking and exploring these other channels like the digital out of home, connected TV type things, because I think retailers, it's a bit easier to see if you're having a direct effect on sales, right? So
why? Because they sell a product.
yeah. Rather than trying to like run these models that you look at months in advance. But yeah, I think that I could probably expand on that, Sean, but I'll probably send you a message after this.
I think that's sort of everything we prepared to run through. I just want to say thanks. That was super insightful.
In my hot seat. It's very hot now.
Is it?
Yes.
I was just looking at your head thinking how small it was, but like how much information you had in there. It was quite incredible. So I don't think there's any other questions. Have you got anything else you want to say before we let everyone go?
No, just watch that IKEA ad because it's brilliant.
Yeah, I actually haven't watched it yet, so I'll we'll make sure we share it with the recording. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. We will be back. Jodie won't be back, but I'll be back in this hot seat with Josh for our organic. I can't remember what it's called. It's really focused on organic content strategies, and I'm hoping that Josh is going to lean more into some of the tools he's been creating as well, and you know, how we've been increasing these ROI through content strategies for some of our B2B clients. Sorry, I remember what it was. I had such brain freeze then.
I can feel it. I was trying to give you the power, but
awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.